Welcome to Uniting the Cults, another episode of Why is Everybody Stupid? What's the evidence against afterlife? An ex-Muslim posted this. I think the main, afterlife and how to cope with it. I think the main thing that kept me faithful was the thought that for all hardships in this life, I had some sort of reward in the end. I also was hopeful that the people that lost their lives early on, I will eventually reunite with them. Since leaving Islam, what are your beliefs about the afterlife? If you don't believe in afterlife, how do you cope with the things I mentioned? I replied, there's no afterlife. Our minds stop working upon the death of our brain, and that's it. We stop existing, but we live on in a sense. People can remember us, and our ideas can continue on in the minds of other people. I noticed I didn't even talk about the other issue. I guess I didn't talk about it because I never had the problem. I don't remember ever thinking, oh, I'm going, or good people here are going to be rewarded. People that suffered here are going to be rewarded later, or people that were really bad here are going to be punished later, or that I'm going to, in the afterlife, see my dead loved ones again. I never thought about any of those things. I remember when my grandfather died, I was still Muslim, and I remember crying that I'm never going to be able to speak to him again. I don't remember, I wasn't thinking, oh, I am going to speak to them again in heaven. I didn't think about that. Somebody replied that you have no evidence of this, no evidence that there's no afterlife. So after some back and forth, an afterlife requires some way for humans to survive the death of their bodies. That's why people came up with the concept of the soul. But the soul concept breaks the laws of nature as we know them. Tell me which organ is responsible for the soul. There isn't one. So what is the reasoning for why we should believe in the soul concept? I've asked this question to many people who believe in the soul, and I've never seen any reasoning that wasn't mythological, as far as I understand. And that's not even a reasoning. It's a method of faith, not a method of reason. So the soul concept is nonsense, and so is the afterlife concept. That is my philosophical evidence against the afterlife. So let's see. We can't prove 100% that an afterlife does or does not exist. No matter what you say, they will come up with something to counter you. These are two different issues. We can't prove, and whatever you say, they'll say nonsense. The thing that made me not believe in an afterlife is how I thought about how fragile things like memories really are. Being brain damaged or having dementia, for example, that just shows me that everything we are is just in the brain, which can be destroyed easily. Someone arguing with you will just say that you will get your memories back in afterlife. So I say, they can counter my criticisms against the tooth fairy too, but that doesn't mean their counters are valid. Of course, I'm not saying they are valid. I'm just saying they don't care what you say. My ideas become seeds. Okay, that didn't go anywhere. I ask myself, why the hell would a god care about a moist speck of dust and only that one insignificant place? If Earth got obliterated, nothing would change. So what? So who's to say we matter? It's most likely there is no afterlife. There's nothing to suggest one, but it's still possible. We could just not be aware of it. Are souls possible? How about the tooth fairy? Souls could be possible. Tooth fairy, on the other hand, we know that money doesn't get put randomly. It's always a person that does it. Again, I think that 99.99% chance when we die, it's black out, but there's still a chance it isn't. Which organ is responsible for the soul? And they didn't reply. So I noticed with the tooth fairy theory, he's looking for criticism. But for the soul theory, he's not. I don't see any attempt to make a criticism. This is an attempt to make a criticism. It's saying, hey, if the soul exists, there needs to be an organ. Just like for the mind or consciousness. We have the brain as the organ. And if you want to say the soul is in the brain, okay, well, how's that different than the mind? It's just the mind. And again, if the soul is in the brain, well, that means it dies with the brain when the brain dies. And that breaks the soul concept now. So it's just mixing up things. So I say here, theories cannot have probabilities of truth. This concept was refuted by Karl Popper. See his book, Conjectures and Refutations, or for a more recent book, see The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch. Quran is a perfect book says, you can't disprove something that wasn't proven to begin with. They are flipping the burden of proof and should know that the burden of proof lays with the claimant. So, example, Bigfoot isn't real. You can't prove that he isn't. I don't have to. The burden of proof lays with the claimant. The person making the positive claim of Bigfoot's existence has to prove he exists first for me to have something to disprove. What's the evidence against the flying spaghetti monster? I guess you mean philosophical evidence, since empirical evidence is impossible. Here's my philosophical evidence against the flying spaghetti monster. This monster theory claims to affect nature, while it also does not make any predictions that we could check against nature. Any theory that claims to affect nature while making no predictions that we could check fails the falsifiability test. A theory that affects nature must also make predictions that we could check against nature, or else it's nonsense. If that didn't make sense, please comment in the below, and I'll walk you through what I mean here. I have other content that explains this in detail. All right, that's it.